Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday night. We are two men in a room. This is our podcast. It is September 28th, 2023. We want to thank everyone who's going to be tuning in and watching this back on rerun. Just want to start by saying tonight we have a special treat. As you know, I am the angriest man in Orlando, Anthony. And we have a very special co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself, special co-host?
Hi, my name is Mara Jade. I come from a bit west of Orlando, and I'm here to share my opinions.
Awesome, that's great. Just to let you know, Vernell is not incapacitated in any way. He's actually on vacation this week. It was his birthday this week, so he's having a fun time. He'll be back next week. But we do thank Mary Jade for coming on tonight and sharing her opinions. And we're going to get into those in just a minute. We want to go over some announcements. Our contest is.
Can I just throw in happy birthday, Vernell?
Sure. Happy birthday to Vernell. As I was saying, so our contest is still up and running. We are waiting to get to our subscriber number of 50. Right now, we are looking at about, do some quick math here, about 35 subscribers. So we're 15 shy of the mark. Once we hit that mark, we'll let everyone know who's subscribed to comment on a certain video. With your comment on that video, we'll take your name, put it into a raffle bag, and we'll pull one name out, and someone gets to win a really, really awesome prize. And we'll see what happens when that number's hit. We've been going for a few weeks. We might have to dial it down a little, but we are shooting for 50 subscribers. So tell your friends, family, the guy who hangs out at the Dunkin' Donuts near your house, tell everybody. Come on in, subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube or Rumble. We're on both right now. And once we get it, we're going to hand out some prizes to people. It's free stuff, people. Come on, join in. And we do not have a sponsor for tonight, but if you would like to sponsor one of our shows, you can contact us in the email in the video description below, and we'll be able to work something out where we can put your name, your business name, or any announcements you want to put up onto the show, and you can probably promote to everyone that watches this show. Our base is growing every time we put a show out there, so more and more people are seeing this. So this is a great way and a cheap way to promote advertising on here. And so for tonight's show, we're going to get into our first topic, which is the Republican presidential debate of last night. Mary Jade, did you watch it last night?
Yes, I did, Anthony.
Awesome. I'm going to start with my review on that. We'll get your review, and then we can kind of go from there. So I did a show a couple weeks ago about the winners and losers of the first debate that came on. I actually went and rewatched it, and if you'd like to, you can go into our archives and rewatch that show also. I was able to basically see losers and winners, and even some people that didn't really move around. This time around, I think everybody was a loser on that stage. There was nobody up there who really could be able to put a voice out of what they were going to do to change everything that was going on in the country right now. A lot of them sat up there, spoke about how Biden was doing terrible, spoke about how Trump had done some terrible things, spoke about how they had done things in the past, but no one really came out and said, well, I'm going to do A, B, C, D from the day I get in here to change all this. So
yeah, I agree with you there. Nobody seemed to have a clear plan of what they would do.
Let me just pop over. So I think you didn't have anybody that really stepped up. And in this moment in history right now, I think we're at a moment where someone needs to really step up and be a voice that people want to say, hey, I want to follow that person. You know, I think
Yeah,
you need
yeah. We need another Reagan is what we need.
yeah, a George Washington, an Abraham Lincoln, a Teddy Roosevelt, a Ronald Reagan. And if you tuned in early and tuned out, all you really saw was just people yelling at each other through this whole thing. Ron DeSantis wasn't actually talked to till about 15 minutes into the debate. And I will say this about Bergman. He didn't get much time. And I'm not going to blame the moderators because, I mean, I understand you want to get the most popular people the most amount of time. But he really had to like jump in a few times to say, hey, I'm still here and I'm trying to do something. But
Right, I noticed that. But he seemed to have some pretty good ideas when he did get to speak.
right, and I said that last time that you know he comes from what would some people would consider a small town environment. North Dakota is pretty big, but it is smaller cities and towns, and he had an economic background from opening and running businesses that I think helps him a little bit, but he just doesn't have the voice to be able to step up into that. And it was
Right,
just
right.
a lot of what was going on in the last debate carried over. Like the first debate, you kind of get to know everybody. And then the second debate, you kind of establish what your platform is. And no one really established what their platform is. I have no clue what any of these people are actually going to do.
I know what you mean. I went in wanting to go with DeSantis and seeing him like take over everything, and I just didn't see that.
Right. And you could almost make a case and say that Trump may have won a little bit from this debate. Because if you look at the numbers, the popularity numbers, I don't think anyone moved the scale up at all. I think, if anything, a few will stay the same. Ron DeSantis, Ramaswamy, maybe Nikki Haley, because she still kind of had that attitude still. I think those numbers will stay basically the same, but the other numbers on people are probably going to drop and may shift over to Donald Trump's numbers. Because at this point, you're going to really just want somebody who's going to win. And the crazy thing is we don't have a Democratic debate going on to contrast. So when you see everybody up there yelling and screaming at each other, you think like, is that normal? And you don't have the other side of the debate to, you know, say, okay, well, they're yelling at each other too, so that's kind of the same. So it looks really almost in shambles on the Republican side. And so people may start thinking like, hey, you know, we got to pick a winner here. So maybe we put all our support in Donald Trump, and I think he could win it all. And so,
I heard something from Trump today that he said none of them were vice presidential caliber. You know, I don't think he wants any of them for a running mate.
right, and he's even got his old running mate in there, Mike Pence, which
Right,
it was.
but I think a lot of people don't trust Mike Pence after what happened in January.
Well, he came off in the first debate as being way too smug. And then this debate, he had an instance where he wanted to answer a question that had been asked to somebody else. And Dana Perino said, okay, answer that, but I have a question. And she asked her question. And he spent so much time answering somebody else's question that Dana actually told him, well, I guess you're not going to answer your question. To which he said, no, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it. And he just seemed like he had like no clue what's going on. And he just wants to rant and rave. I compared him to the old man on a porch yelling at kids down the street. And I think he still kind of got that same attitude that he needs to yell, rant, and rave about stuff to prove that he's a better person for the candidacy.
Well, I felt like he wanted to bring out what he had done during the Trump administration, but at the same time, he didn't seem to want to, put Trump forward.
Right. It was tough to tell with some of the stuff he was saying whether it was himself who did it or Trump who did it.
Right.
And you almost kind of think like, well, okay, he's touting stuff he did, but then he throws his boss under the bridge. So is he really the one who did it? Don't know. Then Christie has just become the official jackass of the group.
Yeah.
And he just wants to, and he just really wants to just rag on Donald Trump all day.
Right. But if you notice, DeSantis did some of that too.
He took a few shots, but he did okay. He explained some of what he was going to do by basing it on what he did in Florida. And when he was doing that, he would take a few shots at Trump. Like, I, was able to cut spending, but you were able to exceed spending. And calling out Donald. He was actually, I think, the first one that called out that Donald Trump wasn't there and said, he wasn't there to basically back up his performance. So it was an easier way to say, hey, why aren't you here? But when you're winning by, I think, almost 40 points over everyone, do you really need to be there for something like that last night? I mean, it was like watching 12-year-olds argue. It didn't go anywhere.
I've been through a lot of elections, and I don't remember people not showing up like this. If you wanted the presidency, you were there. So I'm kind of, I kind of don't like that Trump isn't there.
I think he should at least be at the last one. And I'm not sure if he's made his decision on that. And if he has and it's not to go, I think he should change it, because I think you should go there, especially after last night, and just wipe the floor with everyone to show, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm much better than any of these people up here. So let me say A, B, C, D. This is what I'm going to do. Are you with me? Let's go. Like, that's the type of person we need right now. Me and a friend were talking this week, and we really sat there and really tried to think, like, of the world's leaders right now, of every country, or at least the major countries you could think of, like, who's really the type of person that you can fully believe in and say, I'd go to war with that person. Like, there really
come up with to that question.
There really isn't anybody right now. I mean, you've got, Biden in the US, you've got Trudeau in Canada, you've got some new prime minister in King Charles in England, you've got Putin in Russia, you've got Kim Jong in North Korea, you've got Xi in China, who could be an absolute nut for all we know. And, all the other countries are kind of following along. So if we had somebody from the past, a great leader like an Alexander the Great or a Cleopatra, or even someone evil like an Adolf Hitler, who could talk and rally people at today with everything that we have today, could that person possibly be taking over?
The simple answer is yes.
You think so? I kind of thought, the way they've rallied people in the past, could you I think you could, or at least take over a few countries and put together somewhat of an empire going.
Yeah, but the United States' role has always been to prevent, well, not the good people, but the bad people from doing that and taking over more than one country.
Right,
I
but
think that's
I mean,
why they're trying to help out in the Ukraine.
well, I don't want to get too much into that because I want to save that for another show and to some stuff that I've learned about what was going on with that. But it's getting a little tough to find out who the right and wrong are on certain sides now.
Yeah.
I think
So,
media around the world has been twisting a lot of stuff, and I don't think it's as easy as you know, impossible as like World War II. You knew it was the Germans. They were signing with the Italians, and they were building the empire, and they were trying to get the Russians in on it, so you couldn't trust the Russians, and they were just kind of taking over. And then the
and the Japanese,
Japanese, and yes, and the Japanese were also trying to build their empire up. So
right?
you kind of knew people were coming out and saying, yeah, this is why I'm doing it. And I think nowadays there's a lot of backdoor deals and a lot of shifty things going on that people aren't talking about. So you don't really know like what's going on. Like I find it strange that you've got this conflict over in Ukraine. It's been going on for about a year and a half now, I think almost that. And it hasn't moved anywhere in the last 6 or 9 months. It's really kind of just, well, we know they're fighting over there. They're fighting against each other, but what's really happening? What's going on over there? And that's why I think you need now more than ever a leader to stand up, give speeches that people are going to listen to and say, I like that. I'm following that. I'm going with that. And, I don't think you have anyone right now. When you
Well, I'm
look back,
thinking we haven't had anybody like that since Reagan, I don't think.
I
And
mean,
people last night seem like they're another Reagan.
no, it was, and so many people said because we're here in the Reagan library and in the Reagan site and this and that, but it just seemed like you guys are just like fighting each other. You're not really talking about anything that you're going to do. You brought up China, you brought up this, you brought up, well, you didn't TikTok and all that other stuff. And what was it? Several times somebody said, I'm sleeping with a teacher. I don't know what that's about.
And
What it was all over the place. No one really had direction anywhere there.
now a few people talked about, opening up the oil production and stuff again, which I think that would be very helpful for the economy.
Right. I mean, gas is built into every price we're paying on stuff right now.
Right.
I know the last Fed meeting they were like, well, if you don't count gas, we're actually doing okay, but you're not because when you have food that's grown on a farm and delivered to a store, gasoline is supplying those trucks. When you have toys and products and medications made overseas and brought here, it's diesel fuel, running those boats that bring the stuff over. So you have to count gasoline and petroleum into all these prices, which is just going to boost it if the price of gasoline and petroleum products go up.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, you can't not take that into account because everybody who's just going to your local supermarket is paying the extra price. When you're fueling your car to drive to work, you're paying the extra price. There's no real way to not get around it as of right now, at least.
Right, right.
So do you think there were any winners, losers, anyone on the debate side, or how do you see it?
Well, I think Ramaswamy. I heard things there that I hadn't heard about him. They claimed he was on the take like Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and they talked about him using TikTok and being for supporting China with things here, where DeSantis brought up about preventing China from buying land in the U.S., which that seems to be a hidden thing that nobody's talking about, but apparently the Chinese are buying large tracts of land, like near Air Force bases and stuff, and we don't know what they're doing that for. So I think China is something that somebody is going to have to deal with, and no one really had much to say about it. I kind of liked Tim Scott with some of the things he said about like finishing the wall, bringing back Title 42. Like I said, I wanted to be all for DeSantis, but I didn't. I don't know what the deal is. He doesn't come across the way I think he actually is. And then of course Chris Christie was just, the big Jersey guy. I did this and I did that, but not really telling us what he would plan to do for the whole country. So I'd have to say, Nikki Haley seemed pretty good, but personally, I don't think the country's ready for a female president. Um, and Doug Burgum, we didn't hear
Yes,
much from him,
the
but
North
then,
Dakota governor.
yeah, when he did start to speak, he talked about how he was a business leader, and he did mention China, saying we're in a Cold War with them. And he said we shouldn't be appeasing Biden, which I definitely agree with, by not going after China more. And who else is
Mike Pence. Anything on
there? Mike
Pence?
Pence, personally, he lost me way back in January of 2020 when he
Yeah.
didn't support the president. So I kind of wouldn't vote for him, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think.
The Ramaswamy thing was weird with him. He was trying to explain that he uses TikTok to reach younger people, but then proceeded to say anyone who's under 16 shouldn't be using any of those social sites. So I'm not sure how you reach young people. Then he went on to agree with someone who was saying, well, we should just get rid of TikTok altogether. And he said, well, yeah, as soon as I win the presidency, it'll be gone. So if you're not in favor of using it as a president, why are you using it not as a president? It
Yeah,
just,
I kind of
that,
think he lacks maturity to run the country. I think maybe in 10 or 15 years he'll be ready.
yeah, he
But
lacks an edge. He kind of tends to, at least in this debate, he kind of wanted to be like friendly with everyone. The last
right,
debate, he was very, here's my wall. You're not coming in. I'm going to say what I have to say. This one, he was, well, everybody up here is good people. So I just want to say that. And that just opened it up for Nikki Haley and Tim Scott to just bombard him with all kinds of stuff,
right.
and which made them look bad. I think it made them look bad. I think if you're at one of these debates and everybody at the debate is very close with their polling numbers, DeSantis might be like 10 more than everybody, but everybody was fairly close. I think you sit there, say your position, and then listen to what the other position is, because you'll pick up something that you can argue and say, well, you say this, but you meant to say this, right? Or you didn't, or how is that going to change it? Rather than throwing these bombs that, well, I heard on this website, and I think you said in this podcast this, where he can just say, well, no, I didn't say that. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's what he kind of did. Ramaswamy was able to get out of it by saying, well, no. I had a company when I was young in China, but then when I realized what was going on, I took it out and we never went back. Well, okay, so how young were you? When was it? What did you know about China? What did you do while you were in China? Now these questions pop up. So what about him? But like I said, Haley and Scott, the whole arguing and yelling over everybody, Pence and Christie joined into that.
Scott made a good point, I thought, and no one talks about this much anymore, but Lyndon Johnson's Great Society did ruin a lot of Black families because they made it, you're trying to raise a family, you need money, and they made it so if the father left, the mother could get all this welfare money. I think Lyndon Johnson even said the government's going to be their daddies. And I feel like that was a major thing in ruining a lot of Black families. And
well, I think it'll help people think, but he never answered questions. He always kind of tossed it to something else, which I don't think he needs.
Kind of diversion.
Yeah, he doesn't need to do. I mean, I think if he answers the question, he's got the thoughts to be able to do it.
Right.
I didn't understand why he kept trying to alter the question to fit an answer that he wanted to say at that time. Yeah, it was strange.
I had something I took a note on about Ramaswamy.
Right.
Now, he said he wanted to end the anchor babies idea, and he was actually going to be deporting children who were United States citizens because they were born here.
Yes.
And I don't know how he thinks he could get away with that. I don't think that's a great idea either.
I understand his explanation. He brought up an article in one of the constitutional amendments that says if you're a foreign diplomat, and I believe he used Mexico as an example, if you're a Mexican delegate, I just had the word, Mexican delegation, and you're here, and ambassador, yes, anybody with an official tie to another country. If you come in and you're here for 6 months, 9 months, and you have children here, they're not considered American citizens because you're still representing your other country.
Right.
So by you illegally crossing the border, he was explaining that you weren't following American law, so therefore you didn't align with America, therefore you were still representing your country wherever you came from. So
but
technically,
I think it's a fallacy though, because if you're born in the United States, you are a U.S. citizen.
We'll see. If he were to do something like this, there would be a challenge at the Supreme Court level, and they would have to look at that constitutional part and really try to understand what was meant by it. Because Tim Scott brought up that it was more based off of slavery than illegal immigrants, which I'm not sure how that applies, because is he saying if you were brought from Africa and you had children here, your children weren't technically American citizens?
Well, I don't know how he can say that, because to me, anyone born here is a citizen of this
that's
country.
I wasn't understanding how he was equating that to slavery.
Well, at the time,
didn't make sense.
I understood what he meant. Like this, when this amendment was formulated, we weren't talking about immigrants. We were talking about people who had just been freed from slavery.
Right.
I think that's where he's bringing that point in.
That would definitely be challenged at least.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a tough thing because what if you have a child who's 3 years old? Are you going to leave the 3-year-old here in America and send the parents back to another country? I mean,
No, you can't do that, but that's the dilemma.
right,
Like I can remember, I'm ethnically Portuguese, and I remember people who had come here as children didn't bother to get uh, naturalized as citizens, and they did commit crimes and were deported back to their homeland where they knew no one, didn't know the language. It's a bad situation there. You don't know what we should be doing about somebody like that. So I think that's kind of the same thing talking about the anchor babies. Granted, they're children now and they haven't committed crimes or anything, but I think it could run into a bad situation like where these people were getting sent to the Azores and the government there didn't want them there because
right,
they were criminals.
right.
It's a very weird situation.
I I think it would be something that would be worked out through the courts if he ends up making it, which I would say your top three out of this is probably Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Nikki Haley. I think everybody else, you've got a tough road to get through. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. So
Yeah.
that's
See, I would say DeSantis, Haley, and Scott,
okay.
not Ramaswamy.
All right. So that was our little roundup of last night's debate, which now brings us into our second topic, which is still political. Yeah, we're a political show tonight. Um, Dress code at the office. So it was talked about a couple days ago that Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, who has had a stroke in the past and is not quite 100%, we'll say, and he tends to walk around in his big Carhartt sweaters and shorts and some sneakers, which is not bad on a weekend. It looks great, it's comfortable. But when you're walking into the U.S. Senate to vote, um, it's frowned upon, we'll say. And there is actually a dress code for the U.S. Senate that you are to be in business attire. Um, so they kind of had suspended it a couple days ago. And then this morning, they actually revoked the casual dress code and said, no, you do have to be dressed up in a suit. So where does Fetterman go from here? What are your thoughts on that one, Mary Jane?
Well, for Fetterman, I mean, somebody should tell him to be taken seriously, you can't dress like you're 14 years old. You have to look the part. I did some research into the history of this, and
Okay.
what we saw was a lot of, all through time, congressmen have dressed in the current way that adults dress.
Proper
And
dress, we'll say.
yeah, proper dress. Nobody just wore, like, take for example Davy Crockett, who was a congressman actually. And we see him like growing up with Disney. I saw him as this guy in the coonskin cap and the leather outfit. But I noticed that he actually dressed properly when he went to Congress.
Interesting.
So I think it's respect too. Like over time, people began to dress in suits, and I think what that did was give people a certain equality. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever your social status was, if you dressed in a suit, you were the equal of your congressman, your senator, and it showed respect for the institution of government. Example is like looking at the first day that Disneyland opened in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was dressed up, totally unlike what you see at Disney World now or
Right.
Disneyland. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was something I was going to actually ask, where back in the day you asked for your representatives to be people of the people. So would you have farmers and mechanics and the laborers just coming in their regular dress, or would they try to clean themselves up to go to
That's
Washington to
why
speak on
that's
behalf?
why I wanted to look at the history of this because we started out where people would be elected, you'd serve for a year, and then you'd go back to your farm or whatever you did, or back to being a blacksmith or whatever. And I think at the time, though, that people, out of respect, would dress well in a business suit, no
Right,
matter what job they did. Depending on how far back we want to go.
right.
Like at the beginning of the country, they'd be wearing those wigs and
Mm,
flowered, ruffled shirts, and it was a different look, but it was the way people dressed to respect the other people they were dealing with.
right. I'd seen paintings from the early times of the country, and I know it's not a great representation of what was going on, but a lot of times, even the political ones, you saw, gentlemen in proper dress, ladies in full dresses, everything looking very pomp and proper at social events and certainly government events, and even walking through the town, you kept yourself looking decent,
Right,
unless you were working at the time. And
right,
it brings up an interesting topic of about, like, look at people flying. 70 years ago people wore suits to fly, and
right.
now you just wear casual wear or whatever you feel comfortable in, and sometimes you're going to get kicked off that plane.
Yeah,
You're not boarding.
very true. Very true.
So yeah, it's something that it was seen as, you like you say, you were respecting the institution of wherever you were at. When you show up to court, you're always wearing a suit and tie, or at least trying to look
Right,
good.
right.
When you doctors still wear, you know shirts, ties underneath their coats.
Yeah,
um, and I think for, a governmental organization like the Senate and the House, I think you should be wearing a suit,
I
or
agree.
I mean, at the very least, put on some pants, for God's sake,
Yeah,
man. Put some
I
pants
agree.
on.
I mean,
Nobody
we don't
wants
want
to see your
society
legs.
to slip back into the mud here.
Yeah, like, come on, man. You can't. I know he's not the brightest bulb out there, but he can at least put on a pair of pants for an hour to go into the Senate and do a vote.
Right.
They're telling him what to vote for anyway. He didn't even know what he's voting for. So just, at the very least, put a decent shirt on, a polo, put some slacks on, walk in, do what you got to do, go back home, take it off, and jump into your comfy shorts and your
Right.
pullover sweater, and
And
have at it then.
another thing I wanted to point out was that uh, they were going to allow the senators not to dress formally, but anybody on their staff was still required to be in a suit and tie.
Well, that's
I don't
just
know if people know
ridiculousness.
that.
That, that
They some people thought they're just trying to appease Fetterman by passing this, but
well, Schumer runs the Senate, and he's Democratic, just like Fetterman. So
yeah,
it it kind of made him look like, well, he's just doing it so he can get the extra vote and make sure everything passes through on his side. So it looked really dirty, really greasy.
yeah. I mean, in doing my research, they showed a picture of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, and they looked so elegant all the time.
Mhm.
It was like a different time in the country, I guess, but they didn't look like a couple of slobs on the land. They looked really good.
All right.
And
All right.
when you're representing the country too, you got to think of that too. Are you going to offend somebody in some other place because of the way you want? Because you want to dress like this, and you don't care who says no, you shouldn't.
Well, and that's the crazy thing is our news is shown in other countries. You can
Right,
watch Sky News in Australia and they talk about us. So
right,
for them to just post a picture of some guy walking through the halls looking like he's about to go play baseball,
right.
everyone's gonna look and be like, "Are you serious? This is what America is now? They don't even care." Like it's crazy to think that, but yeah, those images are out around the world where people are looking at us and being like, I don't think they're where they used to be.
Yeah,
It's sad to think about.
it is.
And it's funny you bring up Disneyland because that's a great segue into our next topic. But yeah, in 1955, Disneyland was open. Walt Disney was there, dressed in a very nice suit. Walter Cronkite was there, dressed in his nice suit, and everything looked really magical and wonderful. And it was an escape. It was really something that was going to be different than everything else. And you could go, and for a couple hours out of the day, you could escape your life and not have to think about the realities of it. And unfortunately for Disney, reality is creeping in and it is slowly destroying that company. And I want to bring up first that I worked for the Disney company. I spent 9 months there working on the monorail system in Walt Disney World. So I'm not someone who just simply just hates this company and wants to see it die. I know there's some people out there have their shows and that's what they're putting out to just watch this thing burn to the ground.
Well,
I,
for one, I had an annual pass. I was there a couple of times a month at least.
right.
And
So a fellow Disney person also.
right. And now I haven't renewed a pass,
Mhm.
and I don't think I'm going to.
Right. And I also had the Disney Pass for a while too. So I don't want to see this company burn to the ground completely. But there certainly needs to be an exchange of attitude at the company because it's not where it used to be. This is a company that is 100 years old coming up next year. And about 80 of those years, it really defined itself as a family company. And me and a friend were talking about this earlier today. Well, as I was working there, it was really presented that this was a show. This was a production for people that were coming in. We called them guests. And we putting on the show were the cast. We were cast members. We were part of the show. And when you're part of the show, you're supposed to walk in there and pretend to be somebody else, pretend to be a character. And I think the problem is nobody wants to be that character anymore. They want to be themselves. They want a representation
Right. Right.
of themselves there.
I have to
And
say, I noticed back in 2015 when I was not living in Florida at the time, I came down for a vacation, and I'd been coming here since the 90s, and I noticed that about the cast members. They didn't seem to care about you. If you had a problem and you went and talked to them, they just didn't care.
right, a lot of the good people that were working there felt like they were doing a good job, but others who weren't were being saved by the union, and nothing was really getting changed. And the representation factor slowly started creeping into the company. And you could see it when they started telling them that, oh, well, you don't have to cover your tattoos anymore. Oh, well, you can go unshaven and walk around and you'll be fine. And oh, don't worry, if you have a few extra earrings in certain places, you'll be fine. It's all gonna be everybody here. And it's like, well, it's okay to have everybody here, but at a certain point, aren't you supposed to look like, a pirate in Adventureland or somebody from the Old West in Frontierland? And I don't think people in Frontierland had a bunch of tattoos or earrings or all that stuff on them back then. So it becomes sort of, not being about the product anymore and being more about themselves. And I think it goes all the way to the top, right to Iger. He made his announcement that he wants to quiet the noise on the culture war. Well, it's great you admit that you even have a culture war going, because for a while you said there wasn't one. But it just goes to show that this whole company is infected with it. And for you to change it, and which you need to change it because your stock price is around $80 right now. You're not making any money with any of these movies you're putting out, several of which have lost money. Your Disney Plus is losing subscribers every quarter. The shows on it are terrible. Marvel's Secret Wars was one of the worst Marvel series on there. Ahsoka is just bottoming out just under, actually just above, I believe, Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Nobody's watching this stuff.
Well, you know what? You know what the problem is?
What's the problem?
They've all forgotten Walt Disney's principles of why he founded this company and opened the parks. They just don't want to. I don't understand why they've thrown out all of his ideas, seemingly.
Because it doesn't involve them. The idea, the general idea, and I remember because I've watched it so many times in the movie that they showed with him. He's there on a Saturday with his two girls at an amusement park fair. They're riding the ponies, going around. He's sitting there on the chair, and he thinks to himself, why can't I have a place where I can have as much fun as my kids are having? Why can't there be a place where trash is cleaned up, it looks nice, everything's taken care of, and it feels so much more magical? That's what he wanted. But when you go and do things like, oh, we're going to charge people for overnight parking at our resorts. Well, why are you going to do that? Because every other resort does it. When you start doing things that everybody else is doing, you no longer become this special place that is different than everybody else.
Exactly, yes.
And that's one of the things that's breaking down. But, I mean, you look at their shows, and their shows are taking characters that they've bought over the years, breaking them down to nothing or killing them off completely and saying, oh, no, well, we got these new characters, and they're much better. But they're not.
Well, I know it's a popular opinion, but they seem to be running down all male characters and making women all these amazing people that can do anything and save anybody, get stabbed with a lightsaber and not die, and all these things that just don't make any sense.
Right. In the Ahsoka series, you have, what's her name?
Sabine?
Sabine. You have Sabine stabbed with a lightsaber, which you have seen in other Star Wars movies. Lightsabers cut people in half, if not completely kill you. Get stabbed in the stomach, and then just has a little spot on her stomach that says, oh, I think I got hit with something. What?
Yeah.
How did you could change this?
They took the characters from the cartoon, and as far as Sabine, they made her so unlikable in Ahsoka that I don't want to watch it.
No, I guarantee you, I'm going to come out and say this because I don't know if the guys on Neurotic have said this yet, which is a great podcast to go watch about this stuff too. Baylan is going to be killed by, I believe her name is Shimi, and I think she's Shim. She's gonna take her lightsaber and put it right through Balin.
But she did that with Sabine, and it didn't do anything.
But some way, somehow, it's gonna kill Balin.
Well, they have to kill him because in real life he's gone. So
I heard that. Yeah, he's not. I don't know when he died, but I heard that.
They have to do something with his character. They don't want to replace the character with somebody else.
Right. And then you've got Thrawn, who looks like Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. He doesn't.
He looks like 40 miles of bad road. Sorry, but
yeah, I saw the designs of him from the Rebels cartoon and from several of the comic books. He doesn't look anything like that. Right. Nothing like what the drawings were. So it's not anything to be scared of. It's absolute garbage. Right. And like you say, they're building up the women, but the women are just so lifeless on this show. Like no one has real emotion in anything. I saw the Ezra and Sabine. I don't know if I can
say this on the air, but Shin totally reminds me of the third Olsen twin when they were older and they'd stand around looking like they were about to collapse all the time.
Oh, Ashley Olsen? Maybe.
And Mary Kate,
Mary Kate. Yeah. Well, it's what they did with Marvel. They killed off Iron Man. Then they made Captain America old.
For crying out loud, they made him into this old sack.
Yes, they killed Han. So you never had a Han, Luke, and Princess Leia reunion. It never happened. Nope. Which is what people wanted.
Yeah.
And it turned into this, the 8th movie is just a space race. Doesn't really go anywhere. Doesn't really matter what happened there. Because in the 9th one, all of a sudden now you have Operation Necromancer with clones of the Emperor, apparently, and all kinds of weird stuff.
I blocked that one out of my mind. I don't remember what they had.
From what I'm hearing, this series is just going to lead into another series, which is going to lead into a movie that connects back to the 9th one. So they don't know where they're going with it. I mean, just sell it back to Lucas at this point. Cut your loss. Just let him handle it.
Well, once again, you've got somebody running Lucasfilm now who's just like these women who are supposed to be all powerful, but they're not.
Well, did you see the photo where all of them are wearing shirts that says the Force is female?
Yes, I did see that.
So there you go. That's your explanation on that one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Disney is just absolutely falling to the ground right now. I don't like seeing it like this, but they have to in order to change. You got to take off the top shelf of leadership. You got to mangle out the middle of it and even take out some of the lower people and take down that damn tower near Polynesian Resort. That thing is hideous, okay? It should never have been there. You should have put it on the other side of the Transportation and Ticket Center, and this is for people who are local, who are only going to know what I'm talking about. But you should have put it on the other side. That would have made a much better area. You've got the property for it. It's amazing. Walt bought 47 square miles of property out here, and now all of a sudden they have no room to put anything. They got to put stuff right on top of everything else.
Yeah, it's like I say, they just totally forgot Walt's principles and just went off on their own little tangents, and they're ruining the place.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense anymore on what they're doing with stuff. And they had a great deal that just got released. What is it? These swimming parks. They've got a season pass finally, and it's a great price, but I'm not paying it because all the crap they're doing right now. I don't want to give my money to them. They need to just clear it out, start fresh, and redo some stuff. And they'll be back on top. I mean, it's not a company that you can't save. You've got a good base, 80 years of good stuff that people want.
Right.
Bring the prices down in the parks a little. Give the cast a little bit of a pay raise to boost them up, boost morale, take out a lot of the people that aren't fitting in well, and go from there. And you could have a CEO going there.
Stop making terrible remakes like Snow White without dwarfs, who hates men. Just don't do it. We have these stories. A lot of them came from the Grimm brothers fairy tales. They were very dark and very creepy sometimes. And Walt made them family friendly. And now these people are just going to ruin them.
Yeah.
Just for a cheap dollar here.
Don't bring back Indiana Jones just to tell him that he's not good and you need this other little girl to help you out. Yeah. What's the point of it?
No point.
I don't understand what their moves are, but if it goes the way it is, in a couple of years they could be completely down, and hopefully they can rebuild. Because if you get a CEO that knows what they're doing and can put the right moves in place and understands customer-based stuff, in 2 or 3 years, that whole company could be right back to the top.
And don't build crazy hotels with ridiculous prices that nobody wants to stay in anyway. Put in a few more like the All-Stars,
Yeah. Or build themed resorts. Yeah. Themed resorts. Put some theming into stuff again.
Yeah.
Crying out loud. All right. I think we've ranted enough tonight. Do you have any other final thoughts on any of this stuff, Mary Jade?
Well, only that I don't know who I'm voting for president.
Okay.
I hope they dress in suits in Congress. And I wish Disney could be what it was when I was growing up. But I don't hold out much hope for that.
All right. Well, we'll see how that's all going to happen and turn out. And stay tuned to this show. We do it every Thursday nights at 8-ish. And we'll be dealing with all these topics and some new ones every week. So we want to close up the show. Once again, we have our contest going on. Once we hit 50 subscribers, we'll let you know. There'll be a certain show you need to comment on. Comment on that show, you'll be entered. And a winner will be picked out of those entries, and they'll win a really super great prize. So only 15 more subscribers to go, and we'll be ready to start that contest. If you want to sponsor the show, hit up my email in the description below, and we can get you on to do any announcements, promote your business, or promote yourself if you're into that kind of thing. And then we want to just say thank you to everyone who's watching this live and watching this on playback. We understand sometimes can't always be here on a Thursday, but we do thank you if you watch on the weekends or watch whenever you have time. I want to thank my special co-host tonight, Mara Jade, for joining us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It was a pleasure having you here. It was a lot of great insight and a lot of great historical descriptions for us to really take in and think about. It was really great work. Vernell will be back next Thursday. I will be back next Thursday. And we'll see everybody from there. So why don't we all just say good night, Mary Jade?
Good night.
Good night, everyone.